Hi there. I've been working on a learning how to make cinnamon rolls with freshly ground wheat and using freshly ground or using wheat berries and then grinding those or milling those to make freshly milled flour. So, and it's sourdough cinnamon rolls. So I've started with my fed active starter. This is what I fed it this morning, and so it has doubled in size, and it's all active and bubbly and happy. And then I put half a cup into um, my mixing bowl, and I wanted to talk a little bit about so the starter. When you have active starter, if you let it dry on your measuring cups or on your whatever you've got taken it out of the where it was, like in the active starter container, um, it if you let it dry, it's like concrete. And so I have just taken to using my paper towel and wiping all of it off of my measuring cups so that it's not like concrete when we get ready to clean that up. So, so I got my sourdough starter in here, and then I'm going to put a quarter cup of sugar. You could also use a honey, but this recipe I'm going to make with sugar, and then the next recipe I'm going to try honey and see how it's different, right? And so then we also have 4 large eggs that we're going to put in here. And we save, I know Jonathan did a video on eggshells. We save the eggshells um, and we feed those to our chickens for calcium. We dry them though and crumble them up and make them small so that it's easy for them to um, to consume that way. Uh-oh, that was what I had the sugar in. All right. And so I'm just going to mix this up a little bit so I have those eggs in there. I do, and the starter and the sugar. So we're just going to mix that a little bit. I do have the bread, the dough hook that we're going to mix the bread with. Um, and then we're going to do half a cup of milk. So let's measure out half a cup of milk and add that in. Probably was not the best idea to do that while it was spinning, but we're good. And then we've got 2 sticks of butter that's going to go in here. And so I have and they need to be softened and at basically close to room temperature. So I'm going to take my butter cutter. Cut my butter up and just add that in one piece at a time. Okay. Sorry, I didn't have these already cut. I really like to use my I guess you could call this a dough mixer too, but mainly it cuts in the butter. I really like to use this when I'm making biscuits. It just really helps. It's easier than using a fork, and it keeps you from. In this case, it's okay if I'm warming the butter up with my hands, but if you're making biscuits, you want your butter to be really cold. Um, so you don't really want to transfer that heat from your hands to the butter. So that's really good to use to chop your butter up. I'm going to turn this off just for a minute. I think it's kind of mixed up good. And then we're going to put in the freshly milled flour. I'm going to add that in slowly just to not, It calls for 3.5 cups of hard red or hard white wheat. I'm not going to add all of that at once. I'm going to add it slowly and look at what my dough looks like. You can also use coconut oil in place of the butter. And you can melt your coconut oil. Okay, so we're going to let this go until the dough becomes very smooth and you can, it passes the window pane test. The window pane test is where you take it and you can stretch the dough and it doesn't break. It just forms a thin, thin layer that you can see through. You can see the light through. So I'm going to let this mix for a while and then I'll check it with the window pane test. Okay, so we've let our mixer with the dough hook knead the bread for about 10 to 15 minutes. And we're going to check and look and see if it passes the window pane test. So we'll just take it out and I'm going to pull that. You just pull on the dough until you see if it gets when it gets really thin and you can see the light passing through it here. But it's not, you'll notice it's not tearing up here where I'm pulling it. See there? Just a little bit, but I think it's ready for us to put it in form it into a ball. I like to make it into a ball. If you want to knead it a little bit to do that, you can. And then I've oiled the bowl, and I am going to put this, just back a little bit. I'm just going to put that into my bowl, and I'm going to cover it, and we're going to let it rise overnight. It'll probably be about 12 hours that we let it rise, close to it, and then we'll finish the recipe up. We'll take it out and add our baking powder and baking soda and roll it out. Make cinnamon rolls. All right, so we've let the dough rise overnight, and so it looks like, you can see that it looks like this. I want to remind you that we are using it's a whole wheat because we ground our own, we ground the wheat berries and milled them to make fresh flour. So taking that out of the bag, and I need to add, because we're not fermenting in the refrigerator or anything like that, I'm also adding half a teaspoon of baking powder and half a teaspoon of baking soda. So, well, let me get my half a teaspoon because I don't have it. Okay, there we go. Half a teaspoon. Yeah, there we go. So I'm going to add that in, and I am going to, I'm going to knead this by hand this morning. And then I'm doing half a teaspoon of baking soda. And so I am just going to fold that in and then just fold it over, and then you push. And you don't push hard, you don't push too hard because you don't want to you don't want to over knead, right? But I just need to get that mixed in. Probably should have sprinkled it. I wish I'd sprinkled it across the top instead of just putting a big bulky, amount in there. But you just easily, I like to use 2 hands Some people will use one hand to do that. I don't know if any of you watch Paul Hollywood. I think he uses one hand when he kneads. But just trying to get that worked into the dough. And see, when I did that, I think I pushed a little hard. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take and I'm going to spread that out. So, and that probably was not 5 minutes, but I really feel like the dough is good to go. Like the dough is good to go, and I've probably kneaded it enough. So I'm going to take and I'm going to just kind of push it out and make it into a rectangle, form it into a rectangle. And then I'm going to take my rolling pin. I'm going to roll it out. Now I want it to be rectangular, and I'm going to tell you I'm not the best with a rolling pin. Somebody's watching this. If I were watching this, I would say, look, you got little weird things happening there where it's folded over itself. So one of the things you can do, sometimes your dough will kind of bounce back. And so one thing that you can do is you can let it rest. And mine is pulling back right now, so I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to let it rest for about 5 minutes, and then we'll come back to it. Like that. Okay, so we've let the bread rest a little bit, and I'm just going to try my best to get it out to a rectangular, so that it's in a rectangular shape. I'm also going to measure the height. I want the height to be about a 1/4 of an inch. So I've got my little handy dandy ruler here. I like to measure that because I'm not good at estimating yet, and so I also like to measure things. So okay, I think the rectangular shape, I'm pretty close to that rectangular shape. Also, I learned this, that if you will like go halfway and push in one direction, it helps your dough, like the tenderness of it. It doesn't make it too tough. Okay, so yeah, I am close to a 1/4 of an inch. I'll push that in there. I'm gonna kind of, that's a little, throw that out. So I try to remember. Now I'm not always going to remember to start in the middle, but sometimes I get, see, you can start in the middle this way too. Wrong. Like if you were turning it around, because you'll see, I've watched people, they flip their dough around. So, okay, I think we're about ready. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to let that sit there for a bit, and we're going to mix up what we're going to put onto the surface of the cinnamon roll before we roll up. So I've got butter. We let it soften overnight. This is a stick of butter that we've let soften overnight. We have a cup of brown sugar. I chose to use the dark brown sugar this morning. And then we're going to do 2 tablespoons of cinnamon. So we use a lot of cinnamon in this house. It's good for you. It's good for your blood pressure. It's just FYI. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to take my spoon and I'm just going to mix that together. I may end up going in with my hands, and I have taken off my ring. You know, sometimes I also melt my butter so that it makes it easier to spread right. But today I chose to just leave it as softened butter. That was what the recipe called for too. softened butter. We want to mix that. I like for it to get kind of grainy. So it's getting the sugar and the cinnamon's getting mixed into that butter. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to use my wooden spoon and spread it, just kind of put it onto the roll itself and just put it in places that I can spread it. Probably could have mixed it a little bit more, but I am needing to get this in the oven, so. We're going to just spread that over the surface there. I want it to be, uniform. And I bet some of you may know a better way, and if you do, a better way to spread this butter, like any suggestions, you can definitely put it in the comments. While I'm thinking about this, the recipe that I'm using is from Farmhouse on Boone. She does a lot of, she mills her fresh flour, and so those are the recipes that I have been working with my sourdough quite a bit. She has a really nice website too, and some great videos. I'm going to work that pretty close to the edge. And try to make sure that it's not too thick in one area, right? Kind of spread out evenly. So everybody gets the same ooey gooeyness in the cinnamon roll. When we roll it up, I will cut off the ends. I won't use the ends for the cinnamon rolls. So I'm going to get as close as I can. Well, not as close as I can. I'm going to leave a little bit of an edge. And then I'll cut that end off, right? The end of the cinnamon roll. All right. I think that is. Got some little hard pieces of sugar, but I believe those will, I think I'm going to leave those in there. All right, so ready to roll up. So I'm just going to roll it as tight as I can, pinch it up, but also try to keep it even, right? So I'm going to roll it up just as tight as I can. See where I had air bubbles in it? Bubbles burst. Okay, I'm going to tuck this under. I'm also going to take and press the edge of the cinnamon roll down. Okay. Tuck those edges under, and yep, I need a sharp knife. Now, I've got this on my little, I need to be careful cutting because usually you don't cut on this. I think I'm going to take this up, but let's see, 5 to 20. So it's about 15 inches in length. But then I'm going to cut off the end of it. So they'll be about an inch wide. We'll make them about an inch wide. Okay. Don't need to cut on my pie mat. Okay, so my handy dandy ruler, right? Yeah, about 15 inches. So I'm going to cut off about, I'm going to cut off my ends. And then I'm going to go down and score. So I try to keep them about the same thickness. I'm going to tell you something, I'm not always patient enough to do this, but I'm working on it. We are all in the process of refinement. Let's see. Little edge right there. Okay, so that they're about the same thickness when they're in the, actually, let me get, I like to use this guy. All right. And I have my iron skillet behind me. So I'm going to go ahead and start setting these cinnamon rolls in there. We're going to get these guys in the oven. And while they're baking, there is the cream cheese that we will mix up so that we have that ready to pour over. Gooey gooiness, right? I like to use my large cast iron skillet. It is a Lodge. And look, I am going to run out. I'm going to have to get them a little bit closer, I think. Get them all in. I think that is, I don't know. I have a tendency to want to squeeze them in, but I think that'll be fine. Just call that it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. A baker's dozen. All right, so I'm going to put them in the oven. It's at 375. They're going to bake for about 20, 25 minutes.
All right, so Rochelle had to go away for a minute, so you stuck with me in making the icing for these cinnamon rolls. It's really simple. You really start with about 6 ounces of cream cheese. So I'll put 6 ounces of cream cheese in this bowl. Half a cup of heavy cream. Half a cup of maple syrup. And 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Now I make my own vanilla extract. I'll show y'all how to do that later. But you put in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and then you just mix it up. And so you'll just blend this together till it's smooth. You might want to use an immersion blender or something like that to make sure that it gets real smooth. And so I'm going to do that, and then after we get that done and the cinnamon rolls come out of the oven, we'll pour this over the top of them and enjoy some cinnamon rolls for brunch. Thank you. I'll be right back.
Okay, so Jonathan, you made the icing for the cinnamon rolls, and as you can see, there are only 3 cinnamon rolls left. That's because we had company in between, and so we've consumed the cinnamon rolls, and I can say that they were definitely delicious. They have this like a caramelized crust on the bottom. I think that's due probably to the brown sugar that's there, that melts down and caramelizes on the bottom. It definitely it is it. You would never know that this is a whole grain cinnamon roll, except that when you look at the coloring of it, it was so yummy and so good. What did you think?
So appreciate you hanging around. If you're still here, long video to make these, and you didn't get to see the final product other than what's left here. But it is good. We really enjoy doing these. This is our first one where we're preparing a cooked food. So thank you for bearing with us and making homemade stuff at home with good sound products is what works for me mostly.